Hello, this is David Hall, and it is my pleasure to welcome you all to today's webinar, Global First Responders, FirstNet, ESN, and Elsights, and the COVID-19 Implications on IoT, presented by the IoT MTM Council and sponsored by Tele. Before we begin, we want to cover a few housekeeping items. At the bottom of your screen are multiple application widgets that you can use. All of these widgets are resizable and movable, so feel free to move them around to get the most out of your desktop space. You can expand your slide area or maximize it to full screen by clicking on the arrows in the top right corner. If your slides are delayed, pushing F5 on your keyboard will refresh the page. You can find additional answers to some common technical issues located in the Help widget at the bottom of your screen. An on-demand version of the webcast will be available approximately 24 hours after the webcast and can be accessed using the same audience link sent to you earlier. If you have any questions during the webcast, you can submit them through the Q&A widget. We will have a Q&A session with our panelists at the end of the webinar, but please feel free to ask questions at any time during the presentation. We will try to answer these during the webcast, but if a fuller answer is needed or if we run out of time, it may be answered later via email. Now, it's my pleasure to introduce our moderator, Keith Kreischer, the Executive Director for the IMC. Keith, the floor is yours.
Thanks so much, David, and thanks, of course, to everyone for being here with us, hoping in these difficult times that everyone attending is keeping safe and well. Welcome to this webinar on Global First Responders, brought to you by the IoT MTM Council and Tele, one of our most influential solutions providers. My name is Keith Kreischer. I'm the Executive Director of the IMC, and we've got a great panel for today. I'll be introducing our speakers in just a moment, but first I'd like to take 2 minutes or so to introduce the IMC for those on the call that may not know us. The IMC started in 2014 when a fairly eclectic group of IoT solutions providers, big telcos, MVNOs, providers of hardware and software, got together to form a trade association for the IoT sector. The group consensus pretty much from the start was that we did not want to be a technical standards body, and we did not want to be a testbed organization. There are plenty of good people working on those issues, and they are important, but we see those groups as essentially vendors talking amongst themselves. We wanted to learn more about people that buy IoT stuff, and by that I mean enterprise users, product makers and designers, apps developers that buy connectivity hardware and software to connect devices in the field. What did these people look like? What did they need? How could we help them? So we started putting out content, pretty much anything we could get our hands on, white papers, use cases, blog entries, newsletters. And we didn't ask people that wanted access to the content to pay us anything, but we did ask them to self-identify as buyers, not sellers, to join our organization as adopter members and give us permission to talk to them, and crucially, to give us fairly extensive tabulatable demographic information. And that whole effort turned out to be much more successful than we could have hoped. The IMC today has 25,000 rank and file adopter members from around the world. They cover upwards of 24 different vertical markets. We've now added a couple. Everything from automotive manufacturing to building and construction to retail point of sale to, of course, emergency medical services, as we'll be discussing today. The IMC gets 200 new members weekly. They come to us inbound. We don't recruit. We do curate our membership roles to keep them around 25,000. And we kind of look at our adopter membership as the largest market segmentation study ever conducted for the IoT sector. The IMC board now includes some of the largest companies in the industry, companies you know, AWS, HPE, Tata, and Vodafone, but also smaller influential solutions providers that are equally important. We see ourselves at the IMC as an IoT accelerator. Our mission is bringing together buyers and sellers to expand the adoption of IoT technology for the common good. And we look at today's webinar on global first responders as exactly in keeping with that mission. And with that, I'd like to introduce our speakers. These biographies are abbreviated. You can find complete bios for all of our speakers today on the registration site as well as on the IMC website. but we'll start in the order that the presenters are going to go. So therefore, our first up is Brandon Gallion. Brandon is currently Associate Director of Product Marketing for the AT&T FirstNet Solutions team. He's got 16 years of mobility, wired, and application experience supporting solutions for police, fire, EMS, and other public safety and government organizations. Good morning, Brandon, and welcome.
Good morning.
Great stuff. Next up is Jeremy Kemp, who is the technical lead for devices with the Emergency Services Network in Great Britain, a public safety communications network based on mission-critical push-to-talk standards. Jeremy has performed a number of senior technical roles on the program, but he's currently overseeing handheld, vehicle, and specialist devices. Good morning, Jeremy, and welcome.
Good morning.
Our third speaker will be Yoav Amitai, who is COO at Elsights. And Yoav is bringing extensive operations, technology, and engineering management experience. He's well-versed in product design, manufacturing, and creative engineering, and he is one of the main engines driving Elsights technology today, bringing comprehensive knowledge in telecommunications and connectivity. Good morning, Yoav. Welcome.
Hi, good morning, everybody.
Our final speaker before our Q&A will be Kenneth Bednez, who is Vice President of Application Engineering for Tele, and Ken's responsible for the technical support and module certification of Tele's products. Ken's been with Tele since 2006 and has been instrumental in leading innovative product introductions in North American network operators. Ken, good morning.
Good morning, Keith.
So with that, we do encourage all of you in the audience to submit questions during the presentations. Those questions will be logged, and we will address all of them at the end of our session. For those that we don't get to, that can happen. Sometimes we get too many. We will have a record of it associated with your registration, which our speakers can address after the event. But we do like to hold the questions to the end, just to let the entire audience hear the Q&A. And with that, I will hand over to Brendan. Brendan, who is with AT&T and who will be our first speaker. Brendan, take us away.
So thank you for having me here. I'm excited to talk to you about FirstNet. And as you may be aware, FirstNet is the National Public Safety Broadband Network. It's public safety's network. It was built from a congressional mandate as a review of the 9/11 Public Safety Commission and review of the aftermath of 9/11 and, public safety's inability to be able to communicate in times of disasters. But it's more than just a network. It's advanced solutions, mission-critical services, applications, purpose-built devices, and I'm going to share a little bit more about each of them today with you. So when we think about public safety and we think about our first responders, it's really easy. A few come to mind right away. You've got your law enforcement, you've got your firefighters, you've got your EMS. FirstNet's also for your PSAPs, so your 911 operators, your emergency management agencies, all of those first responders that are critical in a time of emergency. But FirstNet really goes beyond that. And when we start thinking about COVID especially, the first thing that comes to mind is healthcare. Public safety needs to be able to communicate with those support, organizations that, in times like this, to be able to handle this kind of an emergency, an epidemic, truly on a global scale, and it's everywhere. So they need that communication, and so these are some other examples of our FirstNet community of users. And it's really just there to make sure that those lines of communication are open. And, just talking a little bit about FirstNet, number one, we don't throttle, anyone, anywhere in the country. FirstNet, we don't throttle your video. We don't throttle anything like that. It's vital for public safety to be able to communicate in a time of emergency, not worry about how much data they may have used. We have the only physical separate core dedicated for public safety. It's not a virtual core. It's not a commercial core. It is purpose-built. We offer priority and preemption 24/7. It's always on. Doesn't depend on what the network might look like, and to flip a switch, it's there for public safety when they need it. I mentioned that it was a congressional mandate. Well, part of that congressional mandate included this dedicated spectrum for public safety. That's band 14. This is public safety spectrum. Think of it as the HOV lane on a highway for public safety. It's available in over 700 markets. In addition to band 14, and we're adding coverage everywhere. So we've added 120,000 square miles of LTE coverage in 2019. We've given public safety access to prioritize access to all LTE bands. So I mentioned band 14's public safety spectrum, but there is prioritized access on every single one of AT&T's LTE bands. If there's an emergency, we will clear all of those bands, every single one of them, just for public safety. And then, what this adds up to and what we're seeing is that FirstNet subscribers are enjoying the fastest network experience, really faster than any commercial network, including AT&T. So FirstNet, we've got over 1.3 million users on FirstNet today. And that's across 12,000 plus different organizations and agencies. So you're really seeing the power, and users recognize how important FirstNet is and adopting it and using it for their communications. Again, over 700 markets with band 14 spectrum. That band 14, we have a schedule that we have to adhere to as part of our partnership with the FirstNet Authority, the federal government. We are 80% deployed and well ahead of our schedule. One of the unique things about FirstNet is our dedicated deployables. So we have, a fleet of trucks as well as 3 flying cows and an aerostat, a blimp, we call FirstNet 1, that can be deployed anywhere in the country, to respond to when public safety needs coverage. Think of a remote, someone's lost in the woods. There's no coverage. We could deploy one of these deployables, provide that coverage to allow that kind of communication. It's been extremely helpful in COVID as well, in remote testing centers, just being able to come and deploy a network for public safety to use. And they're able to communicate using over 100 FirstNet-ready devices. And so we talk about FirstNet when we think about that. We like to break it down, and it's really 5 different topics. My middle section is missing there, a little technical challenge, but security, it's got to be a secure network. Coverage, got to have the coverage where you need it. Devices is supposed to be in the middle. Public safety has to have a wide variety of devices to use. Control, being able to, do what they need to do at any time, not relying on a carrier or someone to make those kinds of changes. And innovation, so what are we going to do for public safety? What kind of new special, unique to public safety services are going to be launched and introduced? It's all critical. So I mentioned cybersecurity. Security, has to be one of the most secure networks. It's a target for any bad actor. It's public safety's network. So we have our highly secure core. We have available end-to-end encryption. We have a dedicated security operations center. So if you think about, AT&T's network, we already have some of the best-in-class security and monitoring that network. Layered over top of that is a team of over 100 professionals that are there just to look at the FirstNet network, to make sure it's secure. As part of our security offerings, we offer private mobile connections for those organizations that want to extend their environment out to their mobile devices. We also provide mobile VPN services from NetMotion, which is really, best in brand and recognized by public safety and used nationwide. single sign-on. So instead of having to remember a bunch of different logins and use them, you can have with our single sign-on and ICANN solution, you can federate. So you just have to remember that one login, use that same set of credentials across all these different applications. Enterprise mobility management solutions from some of those best-in-breed partners like AirWatch, Mobile Iron, and IBM, and then, encrypting the AirLink on FirstNet. And I mentioned coverage. Coverage is king. It still is. The service has to work where you need it to work. So one of the things we're doing is $40 billion of investment to build a network that's going to reach 99% of Americans. But it's got to work more than just on the street. That's why we have over 6,000 distributed antenna solutions to provide coverage in buildings, where that macro level coverage may not penetrate. I mentioned our deployables. Again, just a fleet of deployables to roll out, to fly out to where public safety needs them to provide that coverage. And always on priority via our first priority service. So it's on band 14, it's on all of AT&T's LTE bands. First responders always have that priority and preemption. Wireless devices, public safety uses a wide variety of devices. They use smartphones from your generic, popular consumer smartphones to dedicated, rugged, devices and in-vehicle devices. Being able to mount a router in the back of a trunk to withstand, the high heat and other harsh environments, and be able to connect, computers and video and all sorts of different devices. Tablets are becoming more popular than ever. With COVID, we got to get away from paper. So we're using tablets now for triaging and healthcare and all these pop-up test centers. And then accessories. You can't always pull out your phone. What can we do from a hands-free? What can we do to make it easier to use these devices, recognizing that you might not always be able to just pull the phone out of a pocket or a holster. Control. I mentioned control. So, public safety needs this control. They need to be able to identify who on the network should have the highest priority, and that's something that FirstNet gives to them. And before they even get on the network, we have an onboarding team, and this is these are resources available that work with each customer to get them enrolled, get them onboarded, do some training, walk through things like customer support, where we have a, 24/7, 365 customer care desk, and it's based in the U.S. I mean, that's something that I get frustrated with when it's not U.S. and so that's something that we did not want public safety to share that kind of frustration. So we have U.S. personnel for our FirstNet customer support. FirstNet Central. So this provides control over and visibility into the FirstNet network. I mean, this is unprecedented. You can actually go into FirstNet Central, view individual tower locations, view the status of each tower, help determine, is there a network issue in my area or something that I should be aware of. You can uplift users. So there's an emergency. We offer the ability to temporarily uplift users to that top of the pipe access. So you get the highest possible priority on the network to make sure that you can communicate during that emergency and set those users so even they can communicate above any other FirstNet user. Innovation. So FirstNet is a public safety, platform, and it's got to be innovative. We've got to bring new solutions for public safety. They've always, public safety's always kind of had to live with whatever becomes available commercially on the consumer network because they're a small universe, so no one's building out solutions just for them. Well, FirstNet is. So, we talk about these an application ecosystem. We have an application developer program. These are groups, these are organizations, companies, individuals that are building solutions, building applications specific for first responders and for public safety. So a couple of those solutions I want to talk about. Number one is FirstNet Push-to-Talk. This is the first ever nationwide push-to-talk solution that's built on mission-critical standards. You get the highest priority on the network. It's built into the network itself. It's not an over-the-top application like many other push-to-talk solutions, and it's built on mission-critical standards powered by that are defined by 3GPP. And then just talking a little bit more about, overall apps and solutions, we have communication. We've made communications applications available working with partners that are designed to help, interagency, intra-agency communication, in-building mapping, the ability to go up to a building and know what it's going to look like inside. Video surveillance and body-worn. I mean, now more than ever, we see what's going on with protests and the need to have accountability and body-worn cameras and those kinds of solutions are available. Telemedicine, COVID, telemedicine is huge, and being able to communicate with your healthcare professional while not being in the same room. And then just, making sure that you can keep all those records, keeping that chain of custody and all of these are solutions designed for first responders that are, we wanted to make sure that they have available, and it's something that FirstNet is going to continue to innovate on, working with all of our great partners. And so again, thank you for having me on, and I'm going to be happy to answer any questions you have later on.
Thanks so much, Brandon. Hey, great stuff, and certainly I can't think of a more important subject to be talking about these days. But with that, I will pass along to Jeremy Kemp from ESN in the UK. Jeremy, take us away.
Okay, thanks, Keith. Thanks, Brandon. I'm going to talk about the Emergency Services Network in Great Britain. This is a network that is analogous to the FirstNet network that we've just heard about, and it's a next-generation mission-critical network for our first responders. And we've got a lot of the same challenges and solutions that Brandon has just described for FirstNet. What I'm going to do in these slides is look briefly at how we need to meet a wide range of needs of our first responders, and then focus on a particular area, which is what we're doing about devices and how we get the necessary prioritization over the network. So first of all, what is ESN? It replaces our current Tetra voice network in Great Britain called Airwave. This is a national network that was rolled out around 15 years ago, so is based on second-generation technology and provides a very good critical voice service. But what we're aiming to do is replace it with a new mission-critical network that is both voice and data, broadband, so giving the PTT voice service, but also messaging, applications, video, IP data services, and so forth. So I'm providing full mission-critical capability in terms of the coverage, the reliability, and the prioritization that first responders need. We're building the network on top of the shared commercial 4G RAN. We have an MVNO model, Mobile Virtual Network Operator model, which provides the MCPTT service and keeps a lot of our services separate from the commercial service that is also part of the same RAN. And critically, it provides that network-level integration that gives us the prioritization of services. I think in contrast to the United States, Great Britain is a small country with a high population density. So it means our coverage issues are a little bit different. The starting point is that we have good commercial coverage to about 98% of the population on 4G already. But we've had, in the same way as FirstNet, had to do quite a lot of extensions to that coverage, so to provide coverage on all roads, including the most remote areas, to provide coverage in critical infrastructure such as London Underground and metro systems. We've built, or we're building, a dedicated layer for aircraft to operate up to 10,000 feet. And then also we have bring your own coverage solutions in various forms. So that gives us near total coverage over Great Britain. Just to give you an idea of scale, not as many first responder organizations as in the States, but we have about 100 first responder organizations covering police, fire, and ambulance. We have 300 other organizations which are second-line responders, and in total that covers about 300,000 personnel. And there's a very wide range of roles there, and our first responders, very often they're not like a consumer. They can't just hold a device in their hand. They may be wearing personal protective equipment, doing public order roles, carrying firearms, wearing chemical suits, and they need to be able to use the services that we provide in all of those different situations. We've got 200 control rooms that we need to integrate with the network, and we have about 50,000 vehicles that we need to install, and that's a very wide range from motorbikes, cars, large vehicles such as fire appliances, boats. And then finally we have some aircraft, predominantly helicopters. So moving on to the sorts of devices that we need, here's a few examples of them. I think for that range of vehicles and users, we need a very wide range of devices to meet all the different requirements that they have. So first of all, starting off with handheld devices, there's different levels of ruggedization that we need, all the way from consumer-style devices to fully rugged handsets, and handsets with the additional physical buttons for push-to-talk and so on. We need things that are smartphones to run apps. We need things that are more voice-centric, such as more like a feature phone or a traditional radio. We need specialized devices, such as intrinsically safe ones for explosive hazard areas. We need tablets with different levels of ruggedization. So a very wide variety of handheld devices, wider than a consumer would need, and some of them really quite niche. We then need to build on that with accessories for those different roles, things like remote speaker mics that people might need to wear, so if they're unable to interact with the touchscreen, body cameras, audio control, and I think increasingly we're going to see wearables being used for things like health monitoring. Similarly, vehicle devices, we're looking at both data-only devices but also MCPTT-capable devices, which is kind of like a smartphone in a box, really, but something that is specifically designed to go in a vehicle, so it can integrate with the vehicle platform for things like ignition sensing, telemetry, and so on. It's sensitive to the vehicle motion state, so it can be used safely while driving. We have static device solutions, so for things like remote alarms, remote monitoring, remote control of fire station equipment, remote video, and so on. And then finally, we have things to go in aircraft, which is quite a challenge because it needs to be airworthy, it needs to be suitable for the mission, and generally because of the airworthiness certification, you're talking about something there that's quite complex and expensive. Broadly, these devices range from pure commercial off-the-shelf through to modified commercial off-the-shelf, where we make changes to the underlying firmware. And some of the devices, and particularly in vehicles and aircraft, we are having to sort of push the pace of the market and actually go out for bespoke development. And these devices will support the full range of services, so just the IP data, PTT voice, video, streamed and message-based data, and so on, and applications. I'm going to dive down into a detailed topic now, which is about the prioritization on the network. So Brandon mentioned that this is a really important aspect for our users, and it is one of our biggest challenges. So I think you can imagine a situation, you have a large incident, you have lots of people, lots of members of the public, the network's getting very busy with traffic from the public, and in those sorts of situations, it's really essential that the MCPTT traffic can get through, and even if this has to be at the expense of preempting consumer traffic and offloading it from the network. So the way that we're doing that is using some of the standards that have been published by 3GPP, and in particular the standards that came out in Release 12. It's worth saying that Release 12 did quite a lot of other work, and some of that focused, for example, on enhanced data rate through features like carrier aggregation to support gigabit download. But I think our understanding from our first responder users is that they value much more having a high level of reliability under all circumstances than just having blazingly fast speed under just a limited range of circumstances. So the mechanism by which this is done is called QCIs, Quality of Service Class Indicators, and Release 12 of the standards introduce some public safety QCIs that have higher priority. So if you look in the table that is to the right of the slide, first of all, you see the QCIs labeled 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, etc., the lower numbers, and those are the things that you get as a consumer. And then for the highest priority are things like VoLTE phone calls and the associated signaling, then going down through things like conversational video, buffered video, and normal data. What the Release 12 did was layer on top of that a number of additional higher priority QCIs that give you higher scheduling priority. So right at the top of the stack in terms of priority, you have things that carry the MCPTT signaling, and then things like the MCPTT media, such as voice. There's subsequently in the later releases of 3GPP being more of these QCIs to carry things like vehicle-to-vehicle messaging and so on. But the basic set that we need for mission-critical push-to-talk came in Release 12. Where this has been a bit of a challenge for us is that these are very low-level configuration features that need to be in the radio modem in the device. And it has to be said that when we first started with the program, this was quite a challenge for us. Although the Release 12 standards came out in 2015, it's been a relatively slow and long process for those standards to filter down into the commercial technology and into chipsets. And what we found was, to begin with, the features were only available in things like premium smartphones, but gradually they've come down into mid-range chipsets and devices, and finally into the sort of industrial modules that we need in some of our devices. And I think when we hear from Tele later, one of the modules that they have produced and that we're using on our network, their LM960, actually supports these features. So I think what has happened with us over time is we've got with devices from a place where it was really quite difficult and we were very, very leading edge, to a point in 2020 where it's really ready for prime time, and we're seeing a much wider range of the underlying technology become available for us. I'd like to stop there, but I hope I've given you an overview of one of the more specific challenges that we face. And I'll be around for questions later, but for now, I'll hand back to Keith.
Thanks so much, Jeremy, and terrific stuff. Really interesting to hear, your thoughts on commercialization of hardware, and I'm sure we'll hear more about that from Ken later in the session. But for now, we'll pass to Yoav Amitai of Elsights. Yoav, take us away.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Keith, for the introduction. And in the next few slides, I would like to take you through how we at Elsights see the challenges of the health world fighting the COVID-19, and how we think that the tech world, the tech industry, can help these medical teams and the whole world's population basically fighting against this pandemic. Let's rethink actually the reality or the situation right now and explore some numbers. Speaking about numbers, I checked it today morning, and as of today, we have 5 million active cases of COVID-19 worldwide. 2 million of them are only in the U.S. Out of those numbers, 16,000 are in critical situation, which is about 1%, and the rest of the 99% are occupying the hospital and treated and can be treated in other places like their homes and utilizing the great infrastructure that the two of my friends before mentioned. Now let's imagine a situation of a guy living in the rural areas where he found positively ill by the COVID-19. What you need to do, you need to get to his car, take a family member with him, while put this guy also at risk of infection, driving to the closest medical center, which is, again, as of today, 80% occupied. According to the CDC, That was 50% 3 months ago, and today is already 80, which is crazy. Go back to the guy. He need to put himself to a threat of being in more critical situation, and put the medical teams at a higher risk because of the load they suffer in the hospitals and in the medical centers. And we think that the whole story can be avoided, and I will try to take you through how we think it can be done. Let's take the same guy, either lives in the rural areas, suffer from lacking of solid infrastructure, live far from the closest medical center that he have around him. You need to drive a long time. By the way, if you think that this guy is special, he's not. There is about 60 million people living in the U.S. rural areas. Worldwide, it's even more extreme. It's 3.4 billion people living in the rural. But even if he lives in the city, 5-minute drive from the medical center, for example, which is, like I said, almost fully occupied, and we want to keep the medical team safe and we want to keep the people safe. And if we try to rethink the whole situation, or what will we do in this kind of situation, this is how we see the solution. Let's think that instead of going to the hospital or to the medical center, the guy will get a drone delivery delivering him a home treat pack, let's call it, which includes all the needed devices that he needs to be monitored remotely for the control center. That doesn't matter where it's located. As soon as he will be connected to all these devices, in the same second, he will be fully monitored, staying in his house without going to anywhere. He will be monitoring by the most talented teams. They will be sitting in their control rooms, monitoring many patients like these guys concurrently, without having the threat of them getting ill. Now, to make this a reality, there are some challenges that the networks need to face, and how we turn it into reality. So basically, we spot 4 main challenges, network challenges. Obviously, there are much more, but there are the 4 that I want to cover today. First of all is the reliability. Like Brandon mentioned before, the network must be reliable. They must work wherever they are. If we want the people to stay home, to be monitoring from their houses, we want it to be reliable. We want it to be steady. We want to make sure that it's working all the time. Second, it must be secure. End-to-end security. Obviously, we're talking about privacy issues. We want to keep the data secure, and for that, we must do end-to-end encryption to make sure that nobody can do any kind of manipulation on the network. We need it to be in real time. Obviously, if we are talking about monitoring, we want to make sure that all the data is getting into the control room in real time, in full. And because of the big numbers of people that will be at home, and that will create an increased data stream, we will need to have the networks to support it. Either it's medical indicates that need to go through the tunnel, or if we are talking about live video and audio conference call, if we want to make sure that the patients that are in their houses feel comfortable with the treatment they get. These are the challenges as we see them. And now I will speak a little bit about Elsights and how we help this whole situation. Basically, in Elsights, what we do, we're aggregating network, either in good network environments like in the cities, or in places like in the rural areas where there are only leftovers of available network. And basically, we take all these frictions of network and combine them together into one big, reliable, and secure pipe that can deliver any necessary throughput utilizing all the available networks. So we are taking all the networks that are available around the area that we are working with, combine them together, and by that, we supply the user enough throughput for any kind of application, in this case, talking about remote monitoring or telemedicine. Now, I want to take you through two of the use cases that we are currently doing during this whole pandemic situation, starting from the U.S. And I will start with the phrase that was done by one of our users, the system users, and she just phrased it much better than I could have ever done. She said, "It just works. From going out to the porch for a signal, I can now finally communicate with my patient and student in real time." Basically, this nice lady, before we got there with our devices, had really bad network. Obviously, they have only wireless network. There is no landlines at all. And she was trying to do a conference call. She was trying to do a standard voice call. She couldn't get an email out from her clinic. And after putting our device, and we're talking on really, really low bandwidth in these cases, I mean, talking about less than 500 kilobytes per second, or even much lower than that, and she wants to do a conference call with her patient or with the student, she needs to get at least 2 or 3 or 4 megabits per second to be able to communicate and to be able to work in a sufficient way. So we put our device there, and today, utilizing all the networks that are available around her clinic, she enjoys, like I said, a couple of megabits, which sounds very low for you all probably. But if you think in her eyes, now she can send an email easily with attachment, can do conference calls, can do Zoom calls or whatever she wants to do using our system, and it's practically changed her life and changed her patient life, because now she can communicate with them much easily. And think about it broadly if we bring it to any other places. Another use case that I want to mention is in Europe, in France in this case. Again, we spoke about how we keep the medical team safe, and we don't want them to get out, or as much as possible, we want to keep them safe because they are very valuable in this situation, and in general, they are very valuable, and we want to keep them safe. So instead of them going out and putting them in a threat, we send teams to the field. Doesn't matter how, in this case, it's nurses that going with the pack. She's going to the patient house, open the pack, connect the patient to all the medical devices that she brought with her, connected the patient parameters or indicators to the control room, to the professor panel. And from there, this patient, instead of getting his treatment from a nurse or even worse than that, she will get the best treatment from the best professionals that are located in the control room. By that can be left in the patient home, or it can be mobile, whatever they need to do that with that. He will be monitored all the time, and by that he will get the best quality of service, speaking about health service and not network service, obviously. Those two use cases just came to open our minds and see how we, again, as an infrastructure company, as telcos, as end devices manufacturing and developers, can help the whole ecosystem fight against the COVID-19, and hopefully will be smart enough and innovative enough to fight this war. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Yoav. Really good stuff with those use cases. It pays to get into the weeds there a little bit, and it really brings it home. Next up will be Ken Bednes from Tele, and Ken's going to talk about commercial products. So Ken, take us away.
Thanks, Keith. I'm going to try to tie some of the areas that Brandon, Jeremy, and Yoav talked about today, and really focus on targeting the buyers and the builders that you talked about as part of your council. So I'm going to talk about some unique things about what everybody talks about, first responders. It's really more than first responders. It's really about public safety, and I think the three previous speakers did a great job of describing how it's more than just the police and firefighters. It's really about public safety. And so what's so unique about what we're talking about today is it's part of the 3GPP standard. So we're not talking about legacy, fragmented, first responder, public safety technology. We're now talking about global 3GPP standard, hundreds of networks deploying the same technology, which allows the buyers and the builders to really scale their business. So the opportunity now, the opportunity to invest in public safety is really now much different than it was 5 or 10 years ago. So when we talk about what are some of the key advantages of building and buying today, it's really about interoperability. We can produce global products that can be deployed around the world for first responders and public safety. We also talk a lot about first responders, but there's also, Brandon mentioned early in the presentation about extended responders or second line support responders. We can also talk about infrastructure. We can talk about how public safety is related to electrical, water, gas, and even border safety. And so when we start talking about this marketplace, it's much bigger than just the people on the front line. And we talked about how FirstNet and ESN and these other networks around the world provide a network and a roadmap for people that's beyond just the first responders. What's very unique about this is the technology roadmap continues to evolve. We talk about we're using cellular data today for FirstNet, public safety, ESN. So we have a cellular network that can do voice communication, that can do data communication, can do video. We just talked about how mission-critical PushtoTalk was launched. And there's a whole roadmap with the 3GPP standard that's going to continue to evolve. There's a big focus on improving location. How do we locate people and devices indoors more accurately? And those type of things are underway to even enhance technologies we have today. The other thing that's really important about the cellular network is the throughput. In the past, there was a lot of LMR, the LAN mobile radios that really didn't support data. If it supported data, it's very low bandwidth. We're now talking about 4G LTE networks that can support gigabit LTE data. So they can download tremendous amount of data, push data up, in hundreds of megabits per second. So we're talking about a very high bandwidth network that we've never seen before for first responders and public safety. And that's going to continue to evolve with release 15 of the 3GPP standard and the introduction of 5G technologies, the 5G new radio technologies that are starting to be deployed around the world. And one of the key items when picking partners is really, there's reliability, quality, future-proofing, and selecting partners that have a proven track record. And so when we start talking about public safety, we need very ruggedized devices. We need something that's going to have 99.999% uptime. We can't have products that can be breaking in the field. So it's talking about environmental testing. How do you ensure that your product can stand and last the harsh environments that it's going to go into, whether it's going to be on a first responder that's going into a fire, whether it's going to be on police car that's going to go driving at fast speeds that may get in accidents, or whether it's going to be out in the environments as part of a pipeline or electric meter or whatever it may be. And so what we do here at Tele is we really focus on these core elements to make sure that we provide technology to help the builders and buyers be successful with their devices. So a little bit about Tele. What we do at Tele is we're an enabler, so we don't make any devices. We have a lot of partners that develop first responder and public safety devices, and so what we do is we create building blocks to help partners get markets to products successfully and very quickly. And so we're going to talk a little bit today about our cellular modules and our IoT modules, but Tele's much bigger than that. We have middleware and security-ware to help customers build out their products with device management so they don't have to build technology to manage those products in the field from ground up. We also offer software for cloud that can help analyze data coming in, so it can route data to different ERP systems. And then we support different types of application development. So when we talk about our IoT modules, you have the ability to write software and develop your application directly on the Tele IoT modules. And so what we're trying to do is really simplify what it takes to bring a first responder or public safety device to marketplace. So we'll do in the next few slides is we'll really focus around some of the IoT modules that we have today. So when it comes to IoT modules at Tele, we talk about cellular IoT modules. We have cellular broadband modules. We also have positioning modules and Wi-Fi Bluetooth. And so we have a wide range of technologies that will help customers enable their device and bring them to market. So what we're going to focus on today is really our cellular technologies. We offer pre-certified cellular modules. So these are cellular modules that are designed from ground up to perform in ruggedized environments. We do extended life and HALT, accelerated life testing on our products, and we take these through all the necessary certifications that are needed to do global deployments. And so we take our products through all the regulatory approvals that are needed for, say, U.S. maybe FCC approval or ISAD in Canada, RED approval for Europe, and the other various regulatory approvals around the world. We also take our products through the 3GPP standard with the certification bodies like PTCRB and GCF. And then last, we really focus to make sure our products will meet all the requirements of the leading mobile network operators around the world, like AT&T and FirstNet and ESN. And so we'll take our products through extended lab testing, field testing, and security testing. And these are three key aspects to ensure that Tele technology will work and be future-proof on these networks. So when it comes to public safety modules at Tele, we offer a wide range of products. We offer products that are designed for embedded designs. So these are LGA or land grid array modules that will solder directly down to a PCB board. And again, you can take your application and run it directly on the cellular module. These cellular modules will support data, voice, location services. They also support SMS for text messaging. So they come with the full feature set, mission critical push to talk, all the things that we talked about earlier in the presentation today. And we also offer data cards for mobile broadband. So these are high-end data cards which will support gigabit LTE data speeds. So this will be if you need to bring a Wi-Fi hotspot into a first responder zone, you can take these data cards and build the ruggedized boxes that were shown in Brandon and Jeremy's presentation today from suppliers like Digi or Cradlepoint or some of these others around the world. And the other thing that's really important about the products is they support security. So they support full encryption, they support secure boot, and with secure boot is really important to make sure that nobody can tamper with the product, nobody can change the firmware on the product, nobody can disable the product. And so we're bringing out many technologies to really focus on security of the cellular module and the device application that's running. And to kind of summarize it, what Telet's doing here is we're focused on many mobile network operator options. So we are bringing out global products that support over 20 LTE bands and support gigabit LTE data speeds. And so the beauty, like we talked about earlier, is not just FirstNet AT&T, it's not just ESN, but there's other first responder networks around the world that you can take advantage of. So now is a great time to really sit back and think about what kind of devices can you bring to market to help with public safety. Brandon really focused on band 14, which is a really key band in 700 megahertz range specifically for the U.S. And so we have a wide range of products that support LTE band 14 from Tele. We have everything from Cat M1 modules to Cat 1 modules, all the way up to gigabit LTE modules. So we have a whole range of public and first responder modules specifically designed for FirstNet. There's a variety of data speeds that we offer, lower data speeds, which are a little bit more ruggedized and cost effective, all the way up to the gigabit LTE. We can upload 150 megabits per second for streaming video and when multiple users are using the cellular access to the network. And then we talked about the technology options. And so the beauty about 3GPP is you have a variety of options, and I listed some of them here with the data, voice, and location. But Brandon and Jeremy talked about how mission-critical push-to-talk is now available. We also have text messaging, which can be important to notify users. And coming down the pipe is more broadcast messaging with emergency responsiveness to get the message out to multiple users in a given area. So there's a lot of things happening within the 3GPP standard today. And then when it comes to form factors, we do offer the embedded LGA modules, which are for very ruggedized devices, and the data cards, which you talked about earlier. So what we do at Tele is we're an enabler. We will help work with your design teams or your buyers to help fit you out with the right products that we offer or the right partners that Tele has today that are building products for the public safety and first responder network. What we try to do is do the heavy lifting. So we are bringing pre-certified modules that are tested and proven to the marketplace to really make your integration efforts a lot easier. Tele is a pioneer and leader in IoT. We've been doing this for over 20 years. We launched our first M2M IoT module in the year 2000, and so we have a proven track record. We've been really focusing on certain vertical markets, over the last 20 years, automotive, which is very ruggedized market, and then home security, which is another market that's really focused on high uptime and high quality products. And so that's what we're doing today at Tele, is to really help and enable customers get to market with our IoT modules, but also with our services offering, which includes device management, our one-edge application development environment, and cloud-based data analytics. So that's what I have for today, Keith.
Thanks so much, Ken. Really bringing it home, like I said, with the actual physical hardware that's going to make this happen. Thanks so much to everyone. We do have a few questions, and I would ask all my panelists to be brief in your answers because we are pushing up against the time. But we've got some time, and we can go a few minutes over. I'll start off with a question for Brandon. Brandon, why should we, as OEMs or solutions providers, recommend FirstNet for public safety and first responders over other commercial networks?
Great question, and I will be brief. So again, FirstNet was born out of the 9/11 Commission recommendation. We're the only ones that have oversight of public safety, the federal government, with that mandate and that we have to deliver to first responders. Commercial providers, they're available. Anybody can sign up for a commercial provider, but because of that oversight, because of the history of FirstNet, it's really what helps us set us apart. In addition to all those solutions and others that I mentioned earlier.
Right on. Good stuff. I'm going to go rapid fire here, so forgive me. But my next question is for Jeremy. Jeremy, how do you see 5G being used to support first responders? We've got questions from the audience on this, and it seems like a lot of people are curious.
That's quite an interesting question. 5G obviously brings a lot of really good capabilities that you just can't deliver on 4G. So some of the stuff that we're doing in the UK, like telehealth, remote medicine pilots, which need the kind of capabilities that you get from 5G. But looking at it from another aspect, one of the things that our users really like is to have 100% coverage, 100% reliability, and so it's going to be quite a few years before we get that with 5G. So I think it'll come into the public safety arena quite slowly. We'll have 4G as the backbone for most communications, but with 5G starting to come in urban areas as it's deployed for some more kind of added value applications.
Right, great stuff. I'm going to, like I said, I'm switching gears quickly here, and I'm going to go fast. But so my next question is for Yoav, and in particular, how does Elsight product provide connectivity in rural areas where the network's limited?
Like I mentioned during the presentation, basically we're collecting all the pieces of available networks, combine them together, aggregate them into one big, reliable, and steady pipe, featuring all the bandwidth and the throughput from the different operators, and by that we can achieve higher bandwidth also in the rural areas.
Right up. And continuing with my rapid fire questioning, I'm gonna throw this one at Ken. Ken, talk to us about certifications. What certifications do FirstNet modules have? Are all new Tele modules supporting FirstNet? And what about voice applications?
Yes, so we have a whole lineup of public safety modules, and the majority of them do support Band 14 and FirstNet. I mentioned we do the heavy lifting, so we go through the regulatory, industry, and operator approvals, which is AT&T FirstNet, and this allows customers to really have a simplified certification process to get onto the FirstNet network. So what customers need to do is they need a valid FCC ID, which typically is reuse of Tele. They need to go through a subset of PTCRB testing for antenna, and then they need to do self-testing with AT&T and a very small amount of lab field testing with FirstNet. And so when a customer integrates a Tele module, they can get onto the FirstNet network for probably around $20,000 of investment and 1 month's time. So the process is very streamlined.
Right. Very good. My last question I'm going to give everybody a crack at because I just think it's so important, and that is, what significant changes do you see in your businesses or your customers' businesses, in this case first responders, that are due to COVID-19, the pandemic? I mean, what changes are you seeing out there? And I would go back to Brandon for this, but I'll give everybody a crack at it.
So for what we've seen is, it's what all of us have seen, the ability to work remotely, the ability to, social distance, to set up, do things like telehealth, to, set up virtual testing stations, doing everything possible to really control, treat, gain information on COVID-19 to best respond for it.
Right. Jeremy, certainly the UK, like the US, has been challenged by this pandemic more than a lot of other places. How do you see things shaking out there?
Well, I think just to echo what Brandon said, it's going to drive a kind of a much greater use of remote working, and kind of having mission-critical broadband mobile networks is going to be a key enabler for that. The other thing that I think we're seeing a lot more of is use of applications. So not just use of the traditional public safety voice services, but a greater use of applications and remote sensing to deal with some of the situations that arise. And again, broadband networks are really a great thing in terms of that type of response. Agreed.
Yoav, you see the pandemic from perhaps more perspectives than others. Obviously, Elsights doing business in many places around the globe. How about you? How do you see the pandemic affecting the telecom industry in particular?
So first of all, I fully agree with Jeremy and Brandon about the usage of the network. I will add to that I think that the whole IoT connectivity world will few steps forward, since it will be part of our day-to-day activity to keep the distance, to make people connected, not only for the first responders, but in every daily activity that we have. I think that we as a telecom industry or a network industry will take much bigger part, and will have much more new opportunities and innovation to put into the market.
Right. And we'll finish with Ken. Ken, in terms of hardware, but also software and connectivity, what are the changes you're seeing out there directly as a result of COVID-19?
Yeah, from a device implementation side, we are seeing a big focus on device management and firmware over-the-air updating. And so people can no longer send people in the field to touch these devices. So there's a larger emphasis on having devices that are autonomous in the field, that can be updated over time and have a long lifespan. So device management, firmware over-the-air updating has become extremely important these last 6 months.
Right. Agreed. I think that's the way of the future. But at this point, we are a couple of minutes over. Really thank everyone for attending, but also special thanks to Brandon Gallion of AT&T, Jeremy Kemp of ESN, Yoav Amitai of Elsights, and Ken Bednes of Tele. Thanks to our speakers so much for enlightening us. That is all for our discussion this morning. Please join us for our IoT Days event coming up in September. And please, everyone, stay safe and stay well. We thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.